It's natural that the longer you're engaged in a fight, there's frustrations and it's hard to see an end to it. So people just want to live their life and express themselves in a more normal way. But we're going to get through this. We're in a good position to win this fight.
Hey, it's Nate DiSarro, and welcome to Titans of Industry, the podcast where I talk to industry leaders and innovators who are at the top of their game and leading the pack in their fields, uncovering some of the best stories in today's business landscape. In this episode, I went to the Arkansas State Capitol and sat down with Governor Asa Hutchinson. The governor discusses juggling the unexpected demands of leading the state through the pandemic while working to still accomplish his goals, why he's been inspired by Arkansans, and why perseverance is the theme of his life. We even covered some of his personal daily routines, including blues music and his love of basketball. And now let's get to the episode. But before we do, it's important to know that whether you're a small business owner or the face of a multi-billion-dollar industry, your organization has a great story to tell, and Content Titan wants to help you tell it. We are a digital content creation powerhouse built for the 21st century, providing all-in creative, strategic, production, post-production, and distribution services for a 360-degree, 24/7 world. In our world, Titans are passionate, creative doers. They have the experience to take your project from start to finish, minimizing your involvement so you can focus on what matters most, running your business. So if you're ready to take your content strategy and production to the next level, our Titans are ready to help. So Governor, I appreciate you jumping in here today. I want to start with perhaps a unique question, which is, there's been a couple of public sensations that have happened over this last several months. One of those is Tiger King, and the other one is The Last Dance, of course, the documentary series about the Chicago Bulls. First of all, have you seen either one? And secondly, specifically about The Last Dance, I know you're a basketball fan. Have you taken anything away from that?
Well, I did watch The Last Dance, and of course, you love it whenever there's a good Arkansan like Joe Klein was in that, Scottie Pippen, of course. So but you know what I took away from it is whenever you are playing or living or wanting to excel at that level, the importance of excellence and how demanding it is, and you know the leadership for Michael Jordan on the court, but Philip Jackson. I mean, he had to adjust. You know, whenever you have real leaders on the court, you had to let them lead. And so I loved it. To me, it was the pursuit of excellence in basketball, but of course you can apply those principles to anything in life. So I love my sports, and I love watching that.
I love that. Yeah, I was a huge Chicago Bulls fan in the 90s, of course, like most people, and I thought that documentary series did a fantastic job of pulling out a lot of the things that we just didn't really see, and I loved seeing the Arkansans as well. I was a big Scottie Pippen fan, and Joe Klein's just the nicest guy. But all right, so public service. You obviously chose a life of public service. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to get into public service to begin with?
Well, public service was an avenue that allowed you to make a difference in your community and in the affairs of life. And, you know, I'm a lawyer by profession, and so you know, as a lawyer, you're serving the system of justice, but you're also involved in the community. And so that naturally led me and gave me some opportunities in politics. But what motivated me was just simply, if you want to make a difference here in this time, while you're alive, the political arena, you impact public policy, you impact individual lives, and I saw that as an avenue to do that. And of course, it wasn't an easy path for me, and so you know, I'd get knocked out of the saddle on a political race, and I'd go back to the private sector. And so, while I've had a career in public service, I've also had a career on the private side, and I've enjoyed both of them. So, very, very blessed to have both those unique opportunities.
And from a partisan standpoint, how has partisan politics changed from the time you entered public service, and where is it now?
You know, that's a good question, and you look at the history of our country, and it's always been partisan, and there have always been tough elections and campaigns that they've slugged at each other. So politics hasn't changed that much, but what has changed is the participation in it. And so it's not just the candidates now, but it's the media that's engaged in partisanship, and then it is the public on social media. So you have got just a higher level of intensity in that partisanship, and it's not just partisanship in terms of the political parties, but it's partisanship in terms of just political divide in general. And so it is social media, it is the media, it is participation, which is helpful by the public, but it takes it to a new level, and it is a challenge for our country and anybody who participates in it.
And I'd assume, one of the things that obviously I don't think you planned on when you were brought into this office, but this global pandemic we're dealing with has obviously added to the partisan nature of the way people feel like it should be handled. But this wasn't on your to-do list, I would assume.
Oh, it wasn't even on my imagination list. No, it wasn't on my to-do list at all. I was elected to be the jobs governor, creating jobs in Arkansas, bringing industry here, lowering taxes, which we've done, all of those things. But then this is a curveball that you didn't expect. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, there's been a partisan taint to it almost, or divide. And, it didn't start out that way. I remember in March, where our country was united, our country was really together in a concern for it and the actions that we should take. Then it became first a divide on whether you ought to shut everything down, shelter in place, and then there was a divide about whether you open it back up or not. Then there's a divide on the mask, and that's frustrating that there is that kind of division, but it's natural that the longer you're engaged in a fight, there's frustrations with it. And I really think some of that's just reflecting frustration, that it's hard to see an end to it. And so people just want to live their life and express themselves in a more normal way. And that makes it doubly challenging. But we're going to get through this. America's a great country. Arkansas has got a great spirit, and we're in a good position to win this fight.
I love that. And have you seen any successes that you've been proud of throughout this time? Things that, Arkansans have done well, things that the leadership team has done well?
Sure, absolutely. I think not shutting down the Arkansas economy was absolutely the right decision because, there's a lot of pressure to do that, but the states that actually did that, the virus has come back just as strong as the states that didn't. And so we would have really hurt ourselves. A lot of people would have lost their jobs and been unemployed had we shut down the economy to that extent. But also, it's just, the spirit of Arkansans, really listening to leadership has been inspiring to me. Words make a difference in what you say and how you say it. And, my daily, almost daily news conferences that talk about where we are, what we're doing, meeting the challenges. I think that's been a success story in terms of transparency and sharing as much information as we can with the public.
So even though it may look and feel like dealing with the pandemic is sort of taken on a full-time role, like leaders of most organizations, you still have other jobs to do and jobs that you would prefer to do. So what does that look like? How have you been able to continue to do the things that you want to do?
Well, you're right. There's a lot of other things going on that important for a governor to deal with. Today, we're looking at budget issues for next year. We've been looking at the legislative session, what economic agenda items we want to drive. What I enjoy is being on the phone, talking to CEOs, trying to get them to look at Arkansas. That's been hampered a little bit because you can't travel as much. But, I've been on the phone, and that's been a nice avenue of have other successes. But it's also about the computer science initiative that I started as governor, that we've been really the number one state in terms of the first state to mandate computer science at every high school. And really the pandemic and the necessity of whether it's online education or whether it is doing telemedicine. All of that hinges upon good computer science skills and software development. And so that's been something that's been a continued success even with the pandemic.
And on a good day, being governor is a tough job, even if the pandemic wasn't a part of your situation. So what's something that you've done or you do personally to kind of stay motivated and keep your team motivated to move forward? Like you mentioned a minute ago, a lot of people are frustrated because we just don't know how long this is going to go, what the situation is going to be a month from now, 6 months from now.
Well, at the very beginning, in March 11, when we had our first case, I remember Dr. Nate Smith called me to the side and says, "This could go on for 7 months." And that just stunned me. And I said, "Well, don't tell anybody that." and in fact, it has gone on. And so that's been challenging. And so with that knowledge that we're in this for the long haul, I asked my staff, make sure you take some time off, make sure you get some time to yourself, and because you're going to burn out on this otherwise. And one of my favorite authors, Henry Van Dyke, has a book, The Importance of a Day Off. And so that's something that I believe in. You got to go fishing. You've got to do whatever relaxes you, because this has really been stressful for my team and really particularly the medical professionals that are out there.
So what are some of the things you do to unwind, to de-stress? I know, like I said, I think you're a basketball fan, like to play basketball a little bit.
Yeah, I know people think, well, you're too old to play basketball, but I never stopped. And so I had a group that we played full court basketball up until the pandemic started. And so we played every week, and that's been my point of relaxation. Now, what have I done since then? While we've had this, we haven't been able to play full court competition basketball. And so I've got a basketball goal at the residence, and I go out there and shoot just about every evening. And it's just shooting, but it's so relaxing to me. Nothing beats the swish of the net. And so I do that, but then I also actually increase my exercise routine just because I had to have it. If I don't have that as I start the day, then I have a hard time making it through the day. So really, in times of stress, you find yourself becoming a little bit more disciplined on things that help you to be stronger.
I love that. So as a leader, every leader is faced with a balance of leading with expertise and authority, being confident in what you're leading towards, but then also with empathy and compassion and ensuring that the people you're leading don't get run over by the process. Do you naturally lean one way or the other? And then how do you kind of maintain a balance between the two?
Well, it is an important balance. And you have to identify with, as a leader, with the emotions, with the stress that people are going through. You have to recognize it. And so that's the reason that we recognize our nurses and our healthcare workers that have been on the front lines for so long, recognizing the stress to the unemployed and the efforts to get unemployment compensation or pandemic unemployment assistance to them. But as you look at this for so many months, emotion only takes you so far. And really what the people of Arkansas and everyone responds to are simply the facts. They don't need to always be preached to. They don't need to, have all of the emotion. They just need to have the facts and information so they can make good judgments. Now, that's the balance you have to have. But I have to remind myself that there's a lot of people that are hurting out there and that are stressed out there. And, whenever you look at starting school this year, teachers are worried. I understand that, identify with that, and you've got to make sure you never lose sight of what people are going through in these difficult times and identify with it, and that's the balance you have to try to work through.
What's one of the hardest things that you try to communicate to Arkansans, business leaders, that maybe they don't understand this is really what we're after, this is what we're trying to accomplish?
Well, what is so difficult is that everything we're going through and asking people to do almost seems un-American. I mean, I didn't run for governor and get elected, or I didn't get involved in politics to put restrictions on businesses. It's not my philosophy. It doesn't come natural to me to use government action. I'm a conservative Republican, and I resist government authority, and that's uniquely American, and it's Arkansas, and so you're telling people you're going to be issuing a mandate you have to wear a mask. I mean, that hurts. But it's necessary, but it's difficult to communicate exactly why this is important. People understand it, but education always works a little bit better. But sometimes you have to do that government action, and so that's part of it. But it's also about businesses. I mean, whenever you look at whether barbershops and salons, it had to be closed, and restaurants had to be put restrictions on, and it felt so good whenever we were able to lift some of those and say, get back in business, we want to support you. And now, we've had our cases go up some, so now the pressure says, well, you got to go back, you got to turn back the tide and put some of those restrictions back in place. I'm saying, no, you can't do that. You just got to resist that. We got to live through this. You got to work through this and navigate our way through this. So this is hard because it's not what we think about when we think about the freedoms that we enjoy.
Is there anything you want to say to business owners and leaders of businesses that would maybe help them think a different way, or so that restrictions don't have to be put back on things?
Actually, the businesses have, by and large, just about every one of them, they fully understand what we have to do for safety. The most important thing to them is their customers, and to keep their customers safe and confidence in coming in, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a clothing store. And so what we're doing is helping them. And actually, if we did put in a mandate to wear masks, businesses thank me, saying that makes our life easier because we don't have to be telling them, because it's something that everybody has to do. So businesses, by and large, have been very, very supportive and understanding of that. It is difficult when you've got a customer that comes in and say, well, I don't want to do that and you can't make me. You just sort of have to live with those circumstances. It's unfair. But businesses have been very, very supportive. So my word to them is thank you. You understand it, and you've worked very hard to protect your place of business and your customers.
And speaking of masks, anybody that watches the press conferences sees that you have almost a different mask every day. Do you have a favorite? Is there a theme that you like to go with on the masks?
Typically me, I lost my favorite mask. So, no, today I wore the mule riders mask from Southern Arkansas University, so that was cool. I like to wear the sports one. I actually have a basketball mask that looks like a basketball, and so the day that I spoke on sports, nobody picked up the clues, but I had a basketball mask on and I had basketball cufflinks. So I was sending a signal, hey, let's look at doing sports this year.
I love it. Well, speaking of sports, that's a big issue. People are, miss all the things that we get to go do as a, community. What should people know if they haven't heard it elsewhere about sports coming back this fall?
One, how important sports is to our high school students. I just met with so many coaches, administrators, and teachers, and they say, if you don't have sports this year, we're going to be losing students. They'll be dropping out of school. And so it motivates them, it gives them the challenge and discipline in life that they need. It's a safe environment for them, even though it's a risky environment with that adult supervision, it can be a safe environment. So you have to understand how important it is. Secondly, you have to understand that there's going to be positive cases. There would be positive cases among teenagers whether you had sports or not, because they go to the lake, they go to the swimming pool, they go to a friend's party, they hang out. And so there's going to be cases. It's just now you have, they're engaged in the sports world. And so we've got to understand that perspective. But it is important. It's going to be challenging for us, unimaginably challenging. But as one student athlete says, if we don't try, we don't have a chance. And so we're trying.
That's great. What do you feel like is one of your greatest accomplishments so far in office, and what goal do you still have left undone?
Well, we've accomplished a lot in the last 6 years, and whenever you look at the fact that we've lowered our income tax rate, which is probably one of the great accomplishments because that's so hard to do, lowering the individual income tax rate next year down to 5.9%, leading the country in a comprehensive computer science program that will change lives for so long. The fact that we have done a lot in our child welfare system, protecting the most vulnerable. Those are things that give me a lot of joy in what we've done. There's a lot more to accomplish, a lot more to do. And one of them is, in November, we want to pass a historic highway funding plan for Arkansas to help build our infrastructure to continue the growth. And actually, during this pandemic, it is even more important than ever that we have that continued investment in our infrastructure and economic growth that creates jobs. I think that we can obviously do more in terms of strengthening our economy. We have a lot of growth in Northwest Arkansas, but I like to see those industries that are coming to South and East Arkansas as well. Want to be able to work on those things. So a lot left to do in my time as governor.
The name of the podcast is Titans of Industry. So obviously, your leadership and the ability that you've shown the state of how you lead doesn't come from doing it all by yourself. So who are some of the titans in your own life that you kind of look to or get advice from or have always looked up to in your world?
Well, I know everybody cites Sam Walton, but we learned so much from his leadership. And his style of leadership and management by walking around and going to the store and listening to the customer, that's ground truth, and his enthusiasm that he had. So he's been just a mentor in terms of business and leadership style. And then in terms of politics, of course, I think of Ronald Reagan, that he was a consistent conservative whether he won or lost, and he lost a few races. But he stuck with his principles, and he always was an optimist. He had a smile on his face. He could work with anybody, and he believed the best days of America were ahead. Those are two guiding lights for me as I think about people who have mentored me.
All right, I want to move into just some rapid-fire questions, just real quick off-the-cuff answers. Best or latest book that you've read?
I really enjoy reading books, and that's a respite for me. I love history books. Of course, the book on Ulysses Grant by Ron Chernoff I enjoyed. But the latest one, and some people make fun of me a little bit, but I just picked it up when I was getting away up in Mount Pettigene, and it's a book on Julius Caesar. And I've never read in that period of history. And one thing that you see in there is that they made a mistake because they voted everybody free grain, free bread, and once you do that, you can't ever get it back. But that's a book I'm enjoying as well.
Most important part of your daily routine?
Well, I mentioned getting up and getting exercise, but it's also having a time of quietness and reflection and prayer. If you don't have that, you don't have the right perspective as you go through the day. But it's the exercise, it's a personal time that I'm speaking of. And I tell you, my wife, we just celebrated our 47th wedding anniversary, and we go for a walk every morning. So that's part of our routine as well, and kicking it off together.
That's great. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received or given?
It was just come from my dad, and it was not just a phrase, but it was just what he taught me and don't get cocky, we're all the same. He believed, and my mom believed, you treat people the same, no matter their title, no matter their position, no matter their wealth, we're all the same. And that sense of commonness is important for me as I go through life.
If you ever write a book, what would the title be, or what would the subject of the book be?
Well, it'd have to be perseverance. Anybody who looks at my political life, most people would have given up. Most people would not have run the second time for governor after losing the first time around, after having lost more than one statewide race. So it's perseverance And that would be the title, I think, of the book that I would write as sort of a theme of my life, and it hopefully is an encouragement to others.
When we get to have concerts again, who are you going to go see? Who's your favorite musician or artist?
Well, I love, and I've really grown to appreciate the blues music, going to Helena Blues Festival. And of course, so I like Levon Helm. I can't go hear him because he's passed away. I like the folksy music that comes from people like Rosanna Cash, Johnny Cash's daughter, that sings a blend of folksy blues. So those are some of my special ones. But you give me some of those 60 rockers, I'll go, if they're still around, that'd be a good wake-up concert as well.
And do you have a favorite food or restaurant, something you're always in the mood for?
I like the all-American restaurants, the comfort food. You give me a good chicken, but a bunch of black-eyed peas and turnip greens and corn on the cob and fresh sliced tomatoes. That's a meal you can live for. So those are the kind of restaurants I like.
And finally, Netflix or the news?
News. I do like to watch the movies, but we found a little biography section that we can watch biographical movies that we've really enjoyed. But I've got to watch the news. I like to see what's going on, but it's the broadcast news. It's not quite the partisanship that you see later in the evening. I like that broadcast news at 5:30.
I love it. Well, Governor, are there any last words? Anything else? You got an open mic? Anything you want to say to anybody out there?
Well, seize the moment. Everybody's got opportunity, and I've been blessed, and seek your opportunity as well. And I appreciate all of the opportunities that people of Arkansas have given me in my life.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to do this.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
If you liked this episode of Titans of Industry, head to contenttitan.co/podcast for more episodes, or subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. Thanks for listening.